During the Second World War, the Swiss doctor Elisabeth Kubler-Ross insisted on leaving neutral Switzerland, where she was safe, to go and work with the wounded and dying on the Russian and Polish fronts. After the war, she continued to work with terminally ill children and their families, learning about the loss of life. The world owes her much of what we understand of grief, both on an individual and a collective level. Much of what we are currently feeling is grief. Grief for the world as we know it, as well as grief for the world as we expected it to become. Many of us have experienced individual tragedy and loss, but mostly we are not used to this collective grief that's in the air. We are all touched. No one remains unscathed so as to provide comfort and support from a position of strength. It seems too vast to fully comprehend and get our heads around. What does a world in mourning look like? Dr. Ross's observation of people coming to terms with loss resulted in what is now widely known as the grief cycle. Acronymically, we call the grief cycle DIABDA. D is for denial, which is a kind of a thought that this virus won't kill us. I is isolation, which may be something like a feeling that nobody else's life is as disrupted as mine is. The first A is for anger, which may be a kind of a feeling that you are making me stay at home, and why are you doing this, and why are you taking away my freedom? B is bargaining, which may sound something like, so if I do social distancing for 2 weeks, can we then go back to normal? Bargaining will be followed by something like depression, which involves a deep sadness, a sense of, I don't know when this will end, a feeling of, I've lost so much. And finally, there's acceptance, an acceptance that this is happening and that I have to figure out how to move forward. In time to come, there will also be meaning. Though it feels as if time is frozen and it does not move when one is traumatized, we will be able to look back, making sense of what happened to us, what contributed to the crisis, and to give this momentous trauma its context in the arc of the human history of the world. We will also be able to observe what is new and what opportunities now become possible. It is important, however, to remember that grief does not happen in such an orderly, step-by-step manner as I've just explained. It is actually a messy and an untidy affair. For instance, one might feel you are at the stage of acceptance, only to find yourself dipping into denying the impact of COVID-19 all over again. This untidy process is true of conventional grief as well as our collective global grieving for our changed world. The fluidity of the landscape, which shifts and evolves constantly as the corona story unfolds, contributes hugely to our current scrambled emotional experience. We experience what is called anticipatory grief because what our future holds feels uncertain. Our primitive minds understand that something bad is happening, but we cannot see it. We feel that loss of safety in a way never experienced before. We know about individuals or families having this kind of experience, but we have not collectively lost our general safety in this way. I will talk more about grief in our current situation, but before doing so, it is important to reflect a bit on the role of fear and anxiety as it overlays the grief that we feel.